Can you believe that in 2023, Nvidia would release a GPU with gigabytes of VRAM unseen in years? We're talking about a potential RTX 4050 with only 6 gigabytes of VRAM. I mean, okay, listen, as much as I like the 4090 4K Max, like some people say, I appreciate that people just want to play games and make it be okay, like at 1080p or 1440p. But at what point is that cutoff where sort of an entry level GPU is not only expensive, which probably the 4050 will be, but it starts to really hurt any type of future scalability? I mean, listen, do you think the only people that want to play the newest games that come out are people that own 4090s and 4080s? Of course not. If you take a look at the Steam survey, a lot of the GPUs are going to be on the cheaper end. You're going to have to be talking about like 1660s. You're going to be talking about even older generation 1060s, 3060s. Those were like really popular, AMD 6600. Those are the type of GPUs that most people, after they get home from work or from school, they sit down and they play on something reasonable that's like a few $100s. So it's obvious Nvidia has not been paying attention to that market at all. They wanted to release the more expensive GPUs first. In some ways, it makes some sense because they do have a lot of RTX 3000 left. Remember, even though they're not new, they kind of like take the slack for the entry-level GPUs. I mean, who's to say that like a 3070 all of a sudden isn't something that maybe somebody on more of a budget would buy instead of a 4070 as they get a little bit cheaper and they're more widely available on the market. One thing is true, there are definitely going to be a lot of RTX 3000 GPUs on the market for the next few years, just because so many of them were made to keep up with the cryptocurrency mining, something that Nvidia said was a waste, by the way, which is pretty funny. They made a lot of money off of it, but then they said it was a complete waste of time and they're sort of focusing on AI. But the focus of today's video is a 6 gigabyte GPU. Okay, you can say 1080p only, and that might be fair. It might be okay. It's not like every single game is going to really, take advantage of all of the gigabytes of VRAM. But look at all the games coming out, like Last of Us and Hogwarts. You can say that they're not perfectly optimized, but that's the reality of new games nowadays. No game is going to be optimized very well. All these AAA games are definitely not optimized, and that a lot of times means that it's going to use a lot of VRAM. Like the 4050 is going to have like a 128-bit memory bus and only 6 gigabytes of VRAM. That's really going to hurt it. Like if you're going to try to play at 1440p, a resolution that already is hurting the 3070 Ti, like people were trying to play Resident Evil and some of the newer games, and it's already passing 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, you're going to have to turn down the settings really heavily on something like a 4050 in order for it to even be playable. And then at that point, you ask yourself, should you get a new 40 series GPU, or why not just get an older 30 series GPU? The only thing you're going to be missing at that point is probably DLSS 3, but as many people have pointed out, including Hardware Unboxed, if your starting point is already low frames per second, like if you're getting 20 frames per second and you turn on DLSS 3, your performance isn't going to really be all that great. You're still going to have stutters and different issues. You have to have a decent starting point already with the power, something that a 4050 most likely will not have. And we can make some assumptions on Nvidia's plans by looking at the laptop mobile GPUs. For example, the 4070 had really lukewarm and you can say bad reviews in a sense because it didn't offer too much more performance than last generation's 3070 Ti. Of course, Nvidia will push DLSS 3.0, which in some cases is good, other cases not really, because not every game is going to utilize that. So if we factor in now the desktop GPUs, who's to say that a 4050 will be anywhere near some of the better GPUs from last generation that you can easily find on the used market? I mean, at this point, if you want to have a strategy against high GPU prices, going on the used market, it's already been sold, so it's not like the retailer or Nvidia is going to see any more of that money. You might as well just buy a used GPU. Some people are selling 3070s and GPUs like that for a fairly fair price, definitely much cheaper than you'll be able to buy probably even like a new 4060 when it comes out or something like that. But it looks like that as the GPUs get stretched out to the lower end, Nvidia is seriously hampering these GPUs. It's not only the price that's high, we have no idea what a 4050 is going to cost. I mean, if the 4070 Ti is any indication, we can assume that the 4050 will cost a lot more than what a 3050 did. So who knows? It might be somewhere in the $300-400 range. Who knows what Nvidia is planning with the 4060 and the 4060 Ti. So that presents a very, very serious issue because it's going to completely block out that market. I mean, it's not only the gamers that won't be able to afford a budget GPU that can perform well. Think of all the retailers that are not going to have a bread and butter GPU that can sell in large numbers, like the 3060 or the 1060 did for regular casual gamers that don't need to turn on all of the eye candy. RTX 4000 is turning into a pretty big disappointment. I mean, Nvidia started with the 4090, which is a very impressive GPU. Price aside, it is very impressive. It's super powerful and it handles everything well. But after that, it started to slowly just make everything worse and still expensive. Like, the product line is one of the worst that I've ever seen for a very long time. Then you have the 4080, which is really expensive, but then all of a sudden it goes down in specs a considerable amount, including cores and VRAM from the 4090. And then the 4070 Ti, which is very limited with its VRAM, its future sort of scalability and prospects are going to be limited. So then you start talking about 4060 Ti's and 4060s that don't have that much more performance than last generation's 3070s. And then, of course, we get to a 6 GB RTX 4050 in 2023. So as you can see, it looks like that the 4090 was the only one that made any sense in terms of a next generation GPU. Everything else is really, really on sort of a big slope down in terms of price to performance and what you're getting for like the future proofing of these GPUs. And then that's a big problem because not everybody's going to want to buy a 4090. A lot of people did, but that's still a $1,600 plus GPU that wipes out most of the market. Most people want to get into a reasonable entry level GPU that's maybe $100, $200, $300 at most. So we're looking at something here that's really going to affect Nvidia in the future because somebody has to take that market share, which they do have a lot of market share. But if their GPUs are not good, I mean, look at Intel and AMD. They're definitely trying to take that market share, especially in that lower end and mid-range market. So definitely interesting to see why Nvidia is producing these really lukewarm GPUs. The prices are high, the specs aren't any better than last generation, and with these lower end GPUs, they really can't push DLSS 3 and ray tracing as much as they do with the higher end GPUs, because then it becomes less of really something that's important to the buyer of these GPUs. Those are typically features you're going to find on higher end GPUs for AAA games. A lot of people that are playing these type of games on cheaper GPUs, they're going to have to turn down the settings anyway. Sometimes it's like esports titles. So they're going to have to find a way to make these GPUs a little bit more popular. As far as I can see from here with the specs and with the potential high pricing that they're going to have, it really doesn't look very good. And it's kind of embarrassing to have a 6 GB GPU in 2023 and one that's probably going to be pretty expensive still. All right, guys, let me know what you think down below. Remember to subscribe and I'll see you guys on the next video.